Deb wrote together, so I rely on her slides and her experience here, why this working group was set up and why it's needed, more or less. So Shelley has already introduced that they had the challenge to bring in lots of these Ameriflux, I think, data sets into a paper. And if it's stored across several repositories, you have to deal with licenses, with agreements. There are sometimes guidance given by the editors of the papers how to get the number down. So they say use supplementary materials or drop and combine citations to get the number down. But that's obviously not what we want to have to. How is the right phrase to attribute the automated attribution? Thank you. So they looked into different possibilities. The dynamic data citation was something they said, well, it's not accurate and, well, there's no tracing, so I rely a bit on her experience here. Collections usually have the problem that you lose the authors of the individual data sets. You cannot combine everyone, and if you are able to have such a long list, you never know in which order you should put them. So it was just something they couldn't come up with. So the final solution and the pragmatic solution was to have a data paper on that. And they had to make a compromise, and only the principal investigators of each repository were part of the authorship. So you lost a lot of contributors to the data in the authors. So you could only automated attribute some of these, a small subset of those who were really creating these data. So this was really an abbreviated version of the experience that Deb had. So the solutions which are out there and which people use are really diverse. I have talked about the data paper. So the problem is really that you cannot assign, and now use credit. So it's not possible that the credit is assigned in the end to all the authors of the data sets. And in the end, you don't have a real traceability to the data. So you don't know which part of the data which is described in the paper was really used. Supplementary materials, in IPCC currently we have the appendices. This is something which is not, which does not go into the metadata of Crossref and doesn't reach any indexer, so it is just lost there. It's just digged into something which is not accessible. These dumping and combining, of course, you lose usually information, so that's also not a really good idea. Sometimes what I have seen is that you just have a data availability statement and you say, well, this is the portal where I got the data from. And then you have absolutely no mentioning of who created the data sets, but it's still, at least in the modeling community, you often see that. You see, of course, also the model evaluation papers or something cited, which gives the authors of that paper credit, but not the data, which we would like to add here. What we've seen in IPCC are the nodal publications with all the curation problems. Sometimes you have mixtures of data and software. If you have relations to some input data, it's not a direct citation which you have. It's just hidden somewhere. Yeah, and the usual collection where you have a new authorship for the collection, so the credit is only assigned to those who created these collections. So that was my summary. Do you want to add something, Shelley, to my analysis of what practices we have and what problems are there. Yeah.
Don't let me talk for a minute. It was the ability to enable credit was really strong here. Think about what RDA's objectives are. We're really trying to promote data as its own research product. And if that can't be valued in some way, where it's, the connection to the paper, and we know in some of our disciplines, I suspect the reason you're here is you have a use case or you're interested in a use case where this might be able to apply. It's a really fantastic way for some of these more complicated, and I'm using not a full, we all have complicated data, right? Science data is not simple. So where you're really challenged with how are you going to connect this data to this paper? And like, for instance, the guidance that AGU has for our journals, we go, okay, you have a data set. Oh, you probably don't. You probably have 1,000 data sets, right? And we're prepared to explain to you how to do your data citation, right? Like we feel really good about that thing. But in reality, it's not like that. You have big data sets, little data sets, aggregated data sets. We want the provenance of it. Oh, that's really hard. Okay. And this is a way for us to have a different kind of mechanism for volume, for many. And we don't think it's going to solve every problem, right? There's others, but it's going to be a nice mechanism to have once it's in place.
So there are questions. I don't know. Okay.
Is it working? Yeah, perfect. Actually, I'm not really agree with the line from the bottom, the second from the bottom. Upload dataset or subset to Zenodo. No direct citation. Actually, it provides a DOI, and it is indexed in EU data. Sorry, it's indexed in OpenAir. So you have automatic via Scholix. You have automatic delegation for credits when you cite a DOI from Zenodo to the authors.
In mind, maybe it's not on the slides, is a case where you just say, for instance, you have used some CMAP data sets and you just upload the netcdf files there and then say, well, this is the data I used for my publication. Then all the credit for the modeling centers is no longer there. So if you just upload data sets which are published elsewhere there, that was my use case in mind.
Yeah, and there's a second for that. I was there when we were having the argument about this one because we were like, oh, okay, that might work. Let's work with Zenodo and we'll get this figured out. But so the variation here, the use case was the list of the DOIs. So you new Zenodo entry, right? You list the DOIs and you cite the single DOI created for the list. And then you use the references in Zenodo to put it in there. So now you hand it to the journal and you give the one DOI here, good luck. You still don't get attribution to the children. It's not that you want the umbrella credit, you want the children's credit. That's what mattered. That was the issue. So Zenodo, you can put data in Zenodo and the people who you identify as the authors will get credit. But if you want an umbrella item in Zenodo, we don't have the capability to get the children credit. We love Zenodo.
Maybe I can add here that my use case was that it's not your data that you upload there, but you want to give you reference to data which is already available to your input data, which is not owned by you. And I have seen that really with the climate data.
If I remember correctly, Zenodo implements the data site schema, the version 4. So you can say when you upload, it's a subset of, and you give the DOI of the superset.
You can do that, yeah. If you do that, then you have this second step, which Shelley mentioned, that you then are a bit better because you acknowledge somehow who has provided the data. But if you publish this collection as this is the data I used, then the credit system cannot get down to the second level to assign the credit to the granulars.
I'm afraid it's more a problem of curation, and you cannot solve curation with a technical solution.
Curation is a different
Curation.
issue.
Curation. You have to curate the link between.
Mic on? Yeah. My experience with Zenodo is that you have to put in every item singularly. So how much time would you need to put in 1,000 citations to a collection? Yeah. And this is definitely not solving the issue. I just want to add a use case to that. And this is not only on the citation, but it's really, that's what we are discussing with the geodesists who are managing, for example, GPS stations, and they are all over. And then they are sometimes organized as networks, sometimes they are not, but the data is usually combined across hundreds of stations. But each and every institution has to show, yes, our data is used, and has to get the credit through citation. If not, they lose their funding. So this is really another perspective, I think, for the need of such a solution. And I wonder if you mentioned Scholix, and Scholix is amazing. And the precondition to be indexed in Scholix is to have each and every citation in the Crossref or DataCite metadata. If we speak about this reliquary that this group was proposing, that is pretty much like the umbrella for thousands of citations, why can't we speak to the journals and say, okay, you don't need to put everything in the reference list, because also the time for typesetting is, I'm with ESSD, it's a nightmare, you cannot do it. But why can't you like unwrap this reliquary and just put everything in the Crossref metadata? You can develop a technical solution. I personally use an Excel sheet that is making me these XML tags, and I can add thousands of things within 15 minutes to the text version of the XML. So there must be solutions, but this could be a way which would then lead to the possibility to be included in Scholix and identified, and there you can make the cross connections.
It seems that you are proposing one of the solutions which we might implement. So if we have a reliquary, where is it analyzed? Is it analyzed at the publisher to include it into the metadata, or is it analyzed with the indexers? But that's 2 steps ahead, I guess.
Yeah. So spoilers, we called our umbrella thing a reliquary for humorous purposes. So spoilers.
Yeah. But I think aren't the indexers using what is provided by the journal? I think they will usually query with the references lists, and if we can redirect them to reference the XML metadata, this would be also much more convenient for the indexers.
Kirsten, we have like 20 more slides to go. So what you're saying makes perfect sense.
Yeah, please.
And we have met with the indexer, so I will give an update on that in just momentarily.
I would just say, please add that comment to the collaborative notes so that we can get back to that. Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
And in the end, we have to analyze what's the content of the reliquary at some place and some point.
Yes. I think it might be useful to get the other points of view that are up here for questions. So this is Matt Buys from DataCite. And
I think you're first, Matt. So one is a question, because in the life sciences, there's biostudies, which has been trying to solve this problem about collections of data associated with the data sets. And I'm just wondering what you're suggesting fits in with that. So that's one question. I've got another comment afterwards.
RO-Crate. Carol Goebel, RO-Crate and such.
It's what Joe at the EBI set off. I can't remember Joe McIntyre, but Chris you probably know more about biostudies and how potentially it relates. Yeah, you don't use the journal as the data, but it's a collection of data sites, and you can cite the biostudy, which has all the data in it. I don't know whether it solves your problem of the child data set, which is the issue.
Exactly.
And then the other but it's just, there is one out there. I'm just wondering what they're doing and worth aligning if there's something. But the other thing was, in terms of putting citations not in the paper but into the metadata, there was a recent paper out just literally a couple of weeks ago about, and this is a research integrity issue, about a publisher, a bad actor publisher, sneaking in citations into the metadata at Crossref without those citations being in the reference list. And that creates lots of issues and problems, which I don't think have necessarily been all thought through. But I would be wary about putting citations into something that can't be publicly visible. And then my third one is maybe, and I have no idea the answer to this, is citations to data sets, individual data sets, the right way to go? I mean, I agree, they're never going to get in the reference list. There's a lot of data sets that use accession numbers and all of those sort of things. Is there something actually that needs to be done differently in order to give attribution, correct attribution? But I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Everything you're saying makes sense to consider. And we haven't even gotten through your promo yet. So you should join the working group. So please do, even if you don't come to the meetings, just get on the email list so you're watching our progression. You can check and make sure we're not missing anything. I think of all of the things that we need to have solved in the workflow of scholarly communication, open scholarly communication, there are so many that I think this piece, though it may last us 20 years, that might be okay. I mean, right now we have some like rocks that will not move right now. And until the seismic activity takes place to move the rocks, they're there. And that's a metaphor. Okay, so got it? Okay. And when that happens, then games change. But what's been interesting is the philosophy around like the current constructs, this new construct, and what will it enable us to do? What do we want? Like defining, what do we want? So our criteria for want was short. We have long, should it be long? Okay, so we have citations. Let's say we accomplished the citation, yes, which is hard, right? That's hard. And those creators of the data deserve to be acknowledged. Deserve in the scientific record.
Yeah, so they do. It's just sometimes impossible. And there's, one gene sequence among that millions that have been used, it's a really hard cultural battle.
Yes.
We haven't said it's easy.
We have Matt has been waiting.
An online question.
Can we do Matt and then online?
Yeah.
And I'm really
There's somebody from the Zoom chat who wants to work. Maggie has to.
Oh, Maggie.
Yeah, I think first Matt and second Maggie.
Maggie, hold on just 1 second. I'm really glad Matt's here because we meant to have a conversation prior to this meeting, but we didn't manage it. Hello, Matt. Matt is the executive director for DataCite and is known, we've been dabbling in this for a while. So
yeah, so I'll try also keep it brief. Just a couple of things like collections, it is possible technically to kind of cascade down those citations. That's like a technical solution that we can talk about as a community, and if that's the path that we go, I think that's possible. Clarification around Scholex is a framework, an interoperability framework that anyone can really set up, and it's a way for us to feed data citations across each other. I think when we think about the challenge that we have around data citations more generally, we involved and lead an initiative, Make Data Counts. We actually had the Make Data Count Summit in DC recently. One of the challenges is that we trying to, as you correctly say, Shelley, you know, around the producers of data need the credit or deserve the credit, but what is there in terms of an incentive? And we definitely want to be very careful around creating a ecosystem where we end up with impact factor and H-index. And so when we move forwards, we're on this journey together. We need to make sure that it's not just possible, but it's easy to do this. And we can make context that policymakers and tenure and promotion committees can make context-based decisions when they're evaluating data citation. And so I think we need to look at this from both angles, both from a policy angle, but also a technical infrastructure angle. How do we move those forwards together? And then the final comment around it requires collective movement across the community and stakeholders, because the challenge that we've had for a long time is that funders have said, well, we will incentivize it when the publishers do this. And then the data repositories will say, well, we'll do this when the publishers do this. And, you know, everyone's sitting around like pointing fingers at each other, waiting for somebody to move. And so there is a bit of a leap of faith here that we all need to do our little bit, and we won't have it perfect. We also need to accept that this is complex. I mean, you know, complex citation working group. And that together, if we just incrementally move forward, you know, I would argue that, you know, we shouldn't have philosophical debates around what is a data citation just yet. I mean, I don't want to rock the boat too much here, but, you know, I think we really just need to have a bit of a leap of faith so we have something to make more context-based decisions and navigate this complex path forwards. And it's a journey together. If we look at, you know, Garfield, you know, when we talked about citations, it was not full agreement. There's still not full agreement around citations, and there's lots of challenges. But we really want to be able to have an equitable ecosystem where globally producers of data and contributors to data get credit for what they're doing and can be incentivized for that. And if we're not moving forwards on that, we're actually doing discredit to the entire ecosystem. And so kind of collective effort needed. So my 2 cents, I'll get off my soapbox.
That felt super supportive. Thank you.
Maggie, please.
Yeah, hi guys. First of all, just thanks to those who fixed the technical
Maggie, are you
issue.
still online? We can't hear you.
I am unmuted, so if you can't
now
hear
we
me, I
hear
don't know
you.
what the problem is. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you are fine.
Okay, great. So first of all, thanks to those who fixed the technical issues, which was preventing us online people from joining you today. Much appreciated. And because we kind of missed the first 10-15 minutes there, I'm not sure if anyone was really bringing home this point, but of course, this is not only about facilitating giving credit to people for being data producers, but I also see this as a really good key aspect of making research really reproducible as well. Because if you have a really good record of what data was used for to produce new research, then everything, well, not everything, but you've taken a giant leap forward into really increasing reproducibility of research. And my final point is that, of course, this is not really only about citing data, it's about citing resources that are used in research for different purposes. So we shouldn't just snow in on, as we say in Swedish, on the data aspect. It's really any digital object that we're talking about here, I think.
Maggie, thank you. That was Maggie Hellstrom. She's been with us on all of from the very beginning. So thanks, Maggie.
I think we have one more question in the room, and then I would like to move on.
Thank you very much. Working?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think it takes a bit of time. Just speak.
Okay. Thank you, Kamil Dziubek, University of Vienna. Maybe I missed that point because I was not from the very beginning in this session, but how about citations in archive? Do the data citations in the papers that are deposited in archive? Some of these papers are actually published after this period, or Hem archive. There are these different depositories for the papers that are in the peer review process. Some of the papers are actually retracted, and then the citations are missing. So how do you cope with that?
It might be, my initial impression is it might be out of scope for what we're doing here. So let me say back to you what I think you're saying. We have papers, we have citations, and the citations are in different types of repositories. So there is some assumption here that we're using a preservation repository that has a relationship with probably DataCite because they're preferred for data, and they generated a DOI, which is a persistent DOI. And then you're saying we retracted a paper. And then the question is, does the DOI for the data get retracted? Yes, is that it?
Yes.
Oh, preprints? Oh, archive.
Archive.
Oh.
Yeah. Archive.
Okay. Oh my gosh. They want the, okay. So the soapbox for the preprints is a different soapbox. In short, I know I have two publishers. I'm looking at your eyeballs, and if I'm wrong, say something. In short, what I can say about this is, I guess I'll talk from AG's point of view. Preprints do not require data citation. Done. Very commonly, I looked into the schemas going into Crossref because this question came up actually recently from one of our members. The XML that for the XML where the references are listed, for all the references in the preprint, from archive included, do not go into the downstream services. Preprint is just the paper. Checking, anybody?
Downstream service.
Crossref, published into Crossref. So when you take a preprint and you send it into Crossref, none of the references go.
No, I think the metadata does go. There is preprint metadata from Crossref, but it is a wild west in terms of.
It's not required.
Well, it's not required, but it also depends on the preprint server. So some preprint servers have XML, some have HTML, some just have PDFs, and so it's just
okay.
It's just you know.
Archive are registered. They've got a million DOIs for data science, and they do register related identity. I don't know. I need to look at what they do for their citation, but they do put in pretty good metadata.
Okay.
Can you repeat that? We need microphones for the online people.
Okay. In short, there's not a common set of best practices for preprints when it comes around to data citations or citations in general. How does that?
Actually, the preprints not even have orders in data in Crossref, I think. Yeah.
There's a possibility for you to start a working group around preprint servers to get standards. I would recommend that. And I'll join you, but I won't be a co-chair.
Whereas publishers have absolutely no standards and they don't agree on any standards. So preprints actually are ahead because they're all to play for.
They're ahead because they're behind. I think Katrina just said they're ahead because they're behind. And
Shelley
Anita,
put together the COPTES standard for, fair data. So
do it myself.
I have to object there. There are a lot of publishers got together and had really good agreement during that meeting that you led. And
Yes.
I still refer to it, even though it's very unfortunate now, even by famous publishers, not known very well. But I really think you should refer to that. Anyway, sorry.
Anita, you're very kind. COPTES is run by a large group of people. I'm just one person. And for the peer review publications, we do have guidance. Did anyone want to know more about complex citations?
In theory, we wanted to go one step ahead with our working group to discuss a bit towards pilots. So we have understood the problem, I think, and we agree on the necessity to have something, a mechanism, so that everyone who creates data gets properly, how is it phrased, automated attribution for their work. I don't want to spend too much time on the different parts which we came up with our draft reliquaries or umbrellas. So basically what we need is an identification how to cite the umbrella, then get some information on the content. If we want reproducibility and have subsets, we sometimes have these two granularities, the one for the credit and the other one giving information on which part of these collections, these internal collections were used. And we could add relations. That's where we had different ideas. So relate to other stuff which is related to the reliquary itself, maybe software which is used in a way, or yeah. So I think that was some optional parts where we haven't really reached agreement. And the second part which I think wanted to discuss is to think about the components that we need. So we need some registry, and we have two short talks, hopefully, one by Uwe Schindler, and the second is a recorded one by Dan Bröder from Clarin. So they have a virtual collection registry for linguistic data, which we could look into. And then I think the discussion was the idea to just think about what do we need to go forward to a pilot or to come to recommendations. So
Tina, can you re-emphasize that we haven't gotten to the solutions? We're still using.
yes, the current status is we have use cases, and we approach now, look into available tools which can help us to implement this.
Yeah, but,
So
okay, hi, thanks for making my own slides available, because we had some problems with copying the slides to the correct thing. So I will talk today about the Pangea collection types, and also how we handle that case of many data. So if you have a collection and many data sets were used to create that collection, or something like a composition of several data sets. So first, I need to give you the short introduction. So Pangea is a world data center, and it's a data publisher for Earth and Environmental Sciences. So most of the data here is from the geosciences and biological sciences. So I want to make it short. The other thing is the team is in Bremen, and we are funded by Helmholtz and hosted by the Alfred Wegener Institute and the University of Bremen. So now the interesting thing is, at Pangea, we have a long time when people came to us with exactly the problems we were discussing here about. And there's not only that problem, we also have some cases where people are coming to us with data sets which consist of multiple tables which can be combined together, and they want to publish a paper, and then in the paper reference list it's only allowed to have a certain amount of publication. And then those people say, okay, we want to have one DOI for the whole data set with all information in Pangea. And for that, already something like 10 or 15 years ago, we started to create collections for Pangea. And the problem with them is, if you're just creating a collection of something, some independent data sets which do make just to get a DOI for that, this does not really make sense, because to have a DOI and a citable entity, you need originality. So it must be some additional work required to put all those stuff together. You need to spend some time in data production, the selection or filtering of those data sets together. But this is not the case if somebody just wants to publish 5 data sets with one DOI together. So what we invented for that case is those parent-child relations for data sets. And for example, in other cases, if you have, for example, ongoing data sets like a series of monthly new updates to a single data set, you can put them all in a collection which is already open, and get a DOI for that to reference to that. So first, a standard data set in Pangea is in normal cases only one file or maybe several files together with a single citation and a lot of meta information around that. So it looks like when you open it like that, you have a standard citation like we know them already from many other data repositories. If you download there, you can download that data matrix, which is only 3,200 data points. So it's a small data matrix, just an example here. So the second thing that we are offering are so-called publication series. In that case, that's what I said before. You have every month a new data set with new data, and all of those data sets have exactly the same structure, and you just want to append them to some parent data set which is easy to be referenced. So you could then reference only the data set, and you mean all the data sets from that series of data. It can look, for example, like that one. This is a typical example from the Mosaic project. This is where the Polarstern was going and was freezing in the Arctic. I think it was the Arctic, yeah. Yeah. So in that case, and here, if you look at that one, this is really a collection. It's just a list of data sets which are all exactly the same structure. They have more or less the same type of metadata, and you can also download them in one go as a single data set. So that's a standard parent-child relation. And if you look into one child, you see here there's a dependency. So the child itself is like in the book chapter. You cannot cite it on its own without referring to the parent. So both have a DOI, but you always should, like in a book chapter, say from which collection this is coming from. This is one part which is often used for those series of publications. And another variant of that, I don't want to go too much into the details here, is so-called bundled publications, which is multiple different data sets that you can put together, and each of them refer to each other. So it's somehow different types of measurements, but you want to give them away as a bundle. So, and the last part here is, and that's mostly what people are interested here, is when somebody is doing a compilation. What we have seen here were just data sets without any data in it, because it was just a collection. What we are now want to do is we want to combine several data sets which may come from other data centers, not only Pangea, and you create a result out of it. And the important thing with that result is that you spend a lot of work in putting together all the data. You did something like averaging over a large amount of data, something like that. And you want to list all those used data sets. And what we are offering in Pangea is, because you can refer to external publications or also data sets inside Pangea, you can add a list of, you can do it 10,000 publications, you can list them in our data sets. So if you look at one example here, for like that one, this is a very, very large data set. I think you can click on that link. Unfortunately, I don't have the citation for that one in my talk. So you see here, you can list all those data sets. So the ones here are from Pangea, and this is like a bibliography in a paper. And we are not limited to 30 publications. We can do many of them. And I think this is one example how this could be implemented. And when you scroll down here at the end, you can download the compilation using all those data sets. You can also add papers which were used, like methods on the top, papers about the methods you were using for compiling that data together. So that's actually wanted to show you. So you have two possibilities in Pangea. You can create data sets without actually attaching data, which is a poor collection, or you can create something like a compilation where you have you upload data, but you can also put references to all the data sets you have used for building up the compilation. And they don't need to be inside Pangea, they can also be outside. So all of them have a DOI, but it does not need to have a DOI. You can also cite any other data sets with other identifiers, which is easily possible. At least you need a citation for all of them. So that's not always possible theoretically in Pangea, because I see here, if you don't have a full citation in the sources, you can also just give a link here. So the title with a link backed by that. But in the ideal case, you should, of course, have a full citation to those data sets you have used. Okay, that was from my side. I think we can switch back to, I stopped my, yeah. Oh, there's a question.
There's a question.
Here in the room.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah.
just one quick question on the last
Yeah.
thing that you showed. Is that information actually going to indexers like DataCite?
Yes. So actually, the list of source references is in the related identifiers.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure how the source for datasets is mapping to the datasite types, but it's one of those 30 types. I don't know how many they are, which is, I think it's one of those which says this is composed of something, or I don't exactly know which one we are using for that. Yeah, it's part. So an indexer can use that information easily.
I would like to ask a question to you as well before you run away.
I'm still here.
So if I recall my use
Yeah.
case, we usually have different granularities for our DOIs,
Yeah.
where you want to have the attribution because we have model data. And if you want to have a measure for the impact, it makes sense to have all data sets which were produced by a model run into one citable entity. Exactly. But if you want to reproduce it, then you don't have a citation on that level, you just have handles. You can identify it, but so in your system, we would just have the handles, but would lose the DOIs.
But actually what you're talking about is exactly what I said here, like the publication series would be comparable, or the bundled publication where you put all of them together, and then the user has a choice to cite the whole thing or the single entities. In your case, you're only giving handles to them. We assign DOIs for all our child data sets, but that's just a decision.
Yeah, I think we will have some use cases where these granules which were used are not citable, but just can be identified. I think that our use case is not the only one which we have there.
So actually, we're also not so happy if the people are citing those data sets without referring to the parent. And because of that, you have that citation with the in notation, like you know it from book chapters. So that's basically to prevent people from just citing one single data set without referring to the parent. Because in a lot of cases, a lot of meta information and descriptions are also part like an abstract. Not all of those child data sets have an abstract, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there are no more questions, we move on to our second example for a registry. And that is an pre-recorded one. I think I need support by the technical persons in the background. So here should be a recording on that slide.
Is it embedded?
Yeah, at least I thought it is embedded. Start? No. It's embedded in the slide, the video, more or less. I'm looking into it.
I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I uploaded it as part of the slides, so.
Maybe it was not embedded in the file.
Yeah, I thought there was an. Okay. I thought there was a line on the bottom where you could play it, but no, it just got lost.
Don, when
Why-
when you hear this recording, we really apologize. Oh, try it.
Can you act it out? Play?
2 words, 1 syllable. Sounds like. Okay. Okay, all right. If you figure it out, let us know. Meanwhile, there's much to talk about. Does anyone here have a use case that you haven't seen up here yet? Oh, yay. Do share.
Sure, I'll give you one. Ethan Welty from the World Glacier Monitoring Service. And we're maybe kind of a funny case. So we're, I guess, data curators in that every year for the last 150 years, people all over the world who study glaciers and are making measurements report to us, and we're the ones responsible for bringing together all the measurements. So I would say now it's probably this single data set that's probably 150 years old, probably 2,000 principal investigators are mentioned, thousands of references to published data subset of the data set somewhere, or papers and methods. And so we're in a situation where there's been reports, or we basically publish these reports, and that's a way to give everyone credit, have their work seen that way. But the data set is just a single DOI. It gets cited by IPCC. And I'm just thinking of IPCC, and then they cite our data set, but our data set is actually composed of the work of thousands of people over 200 years. And we're thinking about, well, we'll probably be shifting to a series of data journals, ESSD or something like that, like a living data set sort of strategy.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then we have this situation where we need to some extent provide a way for all of our contributors to get credit, because it's part of the reason why they submit to us and why the system has worked for so long. So it's like overlaps with many of the scenarios, but I think it's a little bit different somehow.
It's a little bit, don't leave. So I think what I heard, and correct me, because I was also noticing we're trying to solve things down here and I may not have heard every word, that it's more than, it's not a paper, it's a project.
Yeah, imagine that instead of someone in the glaciology community, instead of them having to read 200 years of literature and contact tons of people, we've done that work for them over the last, because that's our mission for the community, right?
So I would probably say you're outside of our scope, but the concept is the same. How do you gather something together for a purpose? Is anybody here from the RAID, persistent identifier groups? So RAID is advisory group. Okay. Thank you. I'm really gonna out you, man, but pig guy. Awesome pig guy. They're out of Australia, ARDC, I believe. They have this idea of a project PID, where such as that what you're talking about, you could have multiple grants, multiple papers, all kinds of scientific output, and not like white papers or ideas or other things, in embodying a project ID. And doesn't DataCite also have their own project ID? I heard that.
Yeah, we've got, if you look at the upstream.
You need a mic.
Matt just said, if you look at the something model and then something.
So I think Ted Haberman actually put out a blog post last week on upstream, the upstream blog. There's 100,000 project IDs within DataCite at the moment that people have used or already registered. And same thing, it's a container identifier that can be used in a citation. I think the use case that I see for projects is more, we won't see that in papers necessarily, I don't think. It's more the controller of the project saying, this project produced these papers or these data sets and links those together. And so we kind of working with the ecosystem to plumb that in the right way. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess the concept is that we can cite across any output or resource, and it's bidirectional. And it's a good thing if we have it in multiple places. And so what we're doing in context of this with like the data citation corpus is we're looking at what are we getting from the publisher metadata? What are we getting in the repository metadata? And what can we get from third parties? And third parties could be algorithms that pull out. And if, as an example, if we have a third party that says the citation exists, the repository says it exists, and the publisher, we know that that's pretty accurate and builds trust in that provenance. What we are seeing is multiple, I think these use cases, we even see databases being, or repositories being cited. We've even seen re3 data DOIs, which re3 data is a metadata record about a repository, but even those are being cited sometimes because it's easier to cite that as, okay, I use this repository. So yeah, a lot to navigate, but I think on the project one, kind of there's a possibility to address that use case as well. And we're working with RAID on doing that.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you so much. That's really helpful. And thank you for thinking that this might help you out because they are heavily related, a gathering of things for a purpose. But for us, we were trying to keep a tight scope and we had it associated with a moment in time, the paper publication, the IPCC report, and this is what went into it. And, you know, these are the folks that are, you know, authors that get the credit.
Is it so exotic for these sort of benchmark data sets in different study areas to, at the surface, you only see them as, you know, very few authors, but in fact, the data sets granular, like inside the data set, they contain many works.
Yeah, I mean,
are we trying to support this in early? Is this a target use case?
Thank you. So I think if I said it back to you, right now, we are not lifting up, having strong, I would say RDA is trying to, other groups are trying to, but it's not yet common such that, you know, imagine a proverbial research team. You've got your PIs who are giving, you know, a small percentage of their time, likely not creating the data themselves, probably giving that to other folks. You've got your postdocs, you've got your other interns. The stucky is like usually the postdoc. And did they get credit for creating the data set that went into the analysis that went into the paper? And the green grass grows all around in the green. So there's so many roles within research that we're not recognizing, and it's not equitable. So you can really tie this into an open science DEIA challenge. Like, it was Danny still here. I think Danny was talking about Danny Kincaid, she runs the BICO Demo. She was here earlier and she was talking about, you know, I didn't get credit on a paper until I had achieved certain other goals having nothing to do with the writing of the paper before she was considered worthy by her supervisor or something. And that's like a real rule out there. But what favors are we doing our early careers, our postdocs, if we say, I'm sorry, we're not going to value this valuable work until you achieve something completely different? It's related, but I mean, that was valuable. But oh no, it's not valuable until you are 2 years into the project. You know, I'm sorry, you're only 1 year in, therefore it's not valuable. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. Like, that's silly. So the culture is problematic because that's a norm. So if we make a mechanism to fix it, we still have a lot of work to do. And this is kind of, shall I talk about indexers now?
Yeah, I thought that we could talk about the other components we need, and what next steps our working
Perfect.
group wants to do.
I'll let you do
Because
that.
we have 90 minutes, but I think you could start with what other components do we need? So if we have a registry which could register these reliquaries, what is the next step? What we need? We need the publishers to,
Okay, so
or we need the metadata with DataCite somehow.
yes, there are many things we're piecing together. We have paper examples. We have, anybody know the phrase of back of the napkin? So we had the back of the napkin, and now it's actually a digital file, but it's still fictional, right? It's not actually created. And our use case folks are coming back in the next couple months to create an actual digital representation, like a proof of concept, without the mechanisms existing, such that you folks could take a look and say, oh, okay, now I see what you mean. I get that. That looks like a landing page. That looks like a place where I can go see the metadata. That looks like a place where an API could provide information. Okay, this makes more sense. And the more we flesh out the use cases, okay, so the details. Okay, workflow. Many assumptions being made at this time, right? You've got the project, they create the paper, they have a lot of data. They generate this funny collection name called reliquary. Why did we do that? Because we were stuck in the proverbial ontology problem of a collection means this, RO crate means that, a package means this, and we're like, okay, just stop. Maybe one of those is going to be helpful, but let's name it something funny and build up to what we think we actually need. So yes, reliquary, precious things go in there, right? If you're Catholic, you know exactly what we're talking about. So the reliquary, the package, the collection has what we want, magically gets created. It could come from multiple repositories. In our minds, it has every possible way to cite, including all persistent identifiers, despite the fact that the pipeline, the publishing pipeline, I'm looking at my publishing people, is tuned to a DOI right now. They're trying to do better. Looking at okay, yeah, I think I got it because they didn't flinch. Yeah, it's tuned to a DOI. But if you put it in there, remember, we can go back and we can do extraction of this is going to be persistent information. The fact that the paper got published, the fact that it had this reliquary DOI in it, will stay because it's part of the scientific record. And someday when we finally figure out how to do assay numbers and software heritage numbers, we'll be able to create links that didn't exist before. So let's put them in because we're going to figure this out in the next 5 years and we can go back in time and fix it. I'm a believer in that, by the way. Okay, then the publisher says, this is brilliant. Thank you for only giving me one data DOI. We don't know what a reliquary is, but we'll do what you said. And they get it into the references section in a way that made sense because we figured out what made sense means. Okay, yay, we made it there. Oh, thank God. Okay, then the downstream part. So this is the publisher coding it correctly, the publisher creating their internal files that match with the schemas of the files for the downstream services. What are downstream services? So when the paper gets published, it hits Crossref. That's all English-speaking journals and a whole bunch of other languages as well, not Japanese, probably not Chinese, not Korean. They have their own DOI registries. And those of you who are DOI aficionados, I may have forgotten something. Music, I think music people have something. And so Crossref is a single point. Okay, really important. So we have to have Crossref on board with this. They have been part of our team, so yay. Right at that moment, right at the Crossref moment, there's a lot of very interesting things happen. Crossref's not the only one who gets those files. Crossref's not the only one who has access. There are a number of other interesting people, and the ones that indexers. Indexers pick up, many of them pick up right there. So because it's easy to get to the single point, right? It's coming in and they feed out to and there's actually way more than you think there are. but there's a handful of very large ones. So frankly, I'm focused there. And the conversations we've had with the indexers are positive. I'm not going to tell you who, I'm not going to tell you what they said, because I don't want them to back away and say, oh, Shelley started talking about it and I didn't talk to my boss yet. Okay, we're not going to mess this up. So like any business, because remember, indexers are there to make money, like any business, they need to see the value proposition. And when this working group gets to a point where we say, oh man, that's going to be super helpful, and it looks like that's going to work, and we've got enough repositories, you know, Pangaea already has it implemented, we just don't have automated cat attribution working. As soon as we have but it's not a reliquary, but we'll figure that part out. Yay, great, it's working. And then we say, okay, indexers, you said if we could have does anybody know the VHS Betamax issue? Are you like anybody as old as I am? Okay, what two? All right. So I can't use that. I need a new example. Okay, one answer. They said they want one answer, not five. So bio, geo, and whatever cannot have their own answers. We all have to have one answer. So that's why we're at RDA. One answer. So simple, logical, doesn't matter the domain. Okay. That's we're going to do this. Then they said they could do it. They didn't promise, but they said they could. It's like, that's better than most people get out of indexers. So I'm going with that as like the best ice cream cone ever. Like, great, I'll take that. Then that's it. If it's indexed, that's it. That's done. And then
we want to use this information in the repositories and
then the rest of it connects. Yes. Yeah. Rest if it's a actual data that's been cited, your ORCID knows about it, Scalix knows about it, all the usual people know about it. And then Anita, go ahead and stand up to the microphone. Then the next thing we've been talking about is you've just created a persistent thing. It has to have its own life cycle. What does it mean if something, the question that came up earlier, what if one of the elements changes? We have to think through all the permutations. So that's operations and maintenance. Anita, yeah.
Is this time for a question?
You can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you were going to continue or not, but so love all this work. I was part of the Force 11 data citation principles, you know, being that old, and we came up with the idea to put the data citation in the citations because we wanted the data creators to have the credit for creating the data and systems for giving people credit for things that occur in citations are a way to go. So it would be easier on all the systems. However, and I haven't done any, maybe somebody has done some looking at this, but one huge issue for data citations is that if you want to assign credit to a human, there is often not an author. I know this is a simple question, but it's also not so simple, perhaps. So many data sets don't have an explicit author. So and as far as I know, in many data repositories, they're not explicitly required, especially domain repositories. I don't know, maybe some of the generalist ones do have some form of authorships, but often also the author isn't mentioned in the reference. So you then don't get the benefit of getting that author identifier in the record. I was wondering if we are very intent, and as I know many other publishers are, on implementing credit. The credit taxonomy, which has now been approved by NISO, et cetera, to have roles for authors that are specific to, for instance, being the data curator or being the actual person who wrote the paper. Would it make sense to expand some work to at least make sure that an author or a human being is connected to a data set? Is question A, and B, would expanding credit to data creation make sense?
And the right person to ask that stood up for me. Thanks, Mark. Go ahead.
All data sets have authors. They just may not be listed. So that's the responsibility of the repository to identify those authors and put it in the citation. All the other roles should be credited. It's really hard. A group within ESIP, Earth Science Information Partners, studied this over a period of about 2 years. We went through a bunch of use cases, a bunch of scenarios. We looked at a bunch of taxonomies, and basically the answer was it depends. So there's a paper in EOS on this, the AGU's sort of new science magazine. Credit where credit is due is what it's called. And basically our takeaway after all of that was that these taxonomies can be very useful. Credit, the credit taxonomy does not work for data or software or semantic objects or other things. Basically you have to sit down and think about it at the beginning of the project and think about, who these roles are and how you want to credit them. We sort of did a hierarchy of sort of authorship, acknowledgement buried somewhere in the metadata. So yeah, the short answer is just in a pretty comprehensive analysis, at least within the Earth Sciences, we didn't find that there was an easy, simple way to do it, because credit is a human concern and humans are messy. Context really matters. So you really have to think it through, and the taxonomies are helpful, but there's not a universal solution.
It's more a comment just around this credit and the difficulty of portioning attribution to any one author for multiple reasons. And you mentioned RAID, and I'm just wondering whether attribution should be to a project as opposed to a person. And then those who are listed as data generators or curators within that project get the credit for it. And then that wraps it up rather than to having it at such a granular level, which is the sort of human individual, and apportions credit to the collaborative work rather than the,
yes.
Yeah, great. Well, sorted then.
I think it's really important to highlight that the concept of credit is a perception.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I agree with all the issues. So yes, attribution and provenance is the issue. Yeah.
So actually it was Mark Parsons who helped us be very careful when we were conceiving, because we were using the word credit, and we don't actually control how others perceive others' work, right? And I would just love to get a bottle of wine and talk about who should get, repositories should be valued. We should go to town and it should be easy. But the point is we want to enable it. The more we connect the dots, we can enable these things. And right now there's data who I am assuming will have authors, because Anita makes a really good point. There are a lot of data sets that don't have the authors in them. And this is best practices. This is getting everybody to try to do better here. Let's assume they're there and that they get recognized. So scope wise, I'll say, let's put that over here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's just, well, I suppose RAID is getting off the ground.
It's new. If you haven't heard about it, it is new.
It's one of the things that could be brought in and there's lots of benefits, potential benefits to RAID and attribution and provenance, and multiple grants and repositories and institutions can be evolved. But in a way, thinking about it as it gets off the ground might be a way to at least future-proof RAID, even if we've got some kind of interim individual author-based solution.
I like
that's
that.
Probably not the long-term solution. Yeah.
I love the future-proof word. And I have to believe that there's folks in here that are kind of excited about what you're saying. And I honestly, I would say, if you want to get involved with RAID, talk to Matt and he'll hook you up. And report back when you let us, something gets somewhere. Anita, go ahead.
Just two quick comments. I hope everybody knows that credit is two things. You're, I think, using the word credit in general. Credit is also the
construct.
No, it's a specific taxonomy.
Yeah.
for editorial roles and for roles. So I just want to make sure that everybody gets that difference. It's a generic word with a small c, and then it's a word with complicated capital and lower letters, but which is very explicit. It's a taxonomy for the roles that people have in a project. And just to the point of RAID, I do think that it is difficult because a single project can have multiple institutions, and I am not sure if they will be. I think we need to talk to those people and see if they are happy for whatever it is to go to that project, because how do you then divide it up? There are still people are counting beans and they're getting promotions, etc., on the beans that have been assigned to them. So it's a step of the way, but I don't think we're all there with just the project level.
Yeah.
Why you have to figure it out at the beginning. We often, it's so much easier when you write a paper if you think about the authorship ahead of time. Same sort of deal. So, and I think a project is fine in many cases, but you're right, it may not get down to that level where it's actually recognized. And that's Shelley's point. If you're a software contributor, you might be measured by your Git commits. And not the number of Git commits, but the value of the Git commits. So, I mean, credit is measured and recognized in very different ways in very different contexts. So if you can sort of sort that out ahead of time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
Get the community in.
Quickly, if you're giving people credit for software, don't do it based on their Git commits.
Mic drop. So we're going to wrap up. You ready? Okay, great. First of all, we have one. Go ahead, Maria Amazon.
Thank you very much. With my limited English skill, if I have a misunderstanding, I'm sorry. I have been working with the government science policymakers in the last decade, and I was a representative of Japan for the an intergovernmental framework, and they recognize the importance of data, and they are now understand the rewards and incentives for the researchers, and the observatories and the data sources are important. However, you can say that like IPCC and or geodetic field, Kirsten knows where the International Terrestrial Reference Frame, which is the basis of the every GPS coordinate systems. And those are made from the very small GPS measurement points. And for instance, Japanese government runs thousands of the GPS measurements, but ministry officers may say that, oh, you have 3,000 measurements, then probably you can cut out 100 or 200 measurements. But those all are the basis of our modern societies. And so this time, issue is not only on the scientific metrics, the data and the rewards and the recognizing the value of any single data set are our basis, and the tracking down to the children and the grandchildren and the original data is our societal basis, and we can say more. We can sell more things in this context. Thank you.
I wholeheartedly agree. So the societal context of having the critical data, such as GPS data, tracked all the way back, and it's so impactful to our world today. I frankly can't get anywhere without my phone. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for coming. We really would like you to stay involved, if not paying attention. So if you've not yet joined our group on RDA, it's free. We don't assign tasks. You can just lurk. It's fine.
Please sign up in the collaborative notes if you are interested in this, and we can see who was here. And you find also links to the slides of the presentation that we couldn't see. So if you are interested in the virtual collection registry, it's in the slides. And what was it, the last
use
point?
cases?
Use cases.
If anyone has a use case, and if you if you're not sure if it'll fit, don't hesitate to bring it up, because, you know, the PIG community, as we've had this conversation, the more we understand and the more we kind of, as Mark said very eloquently, think about it ahead of time, we can empower ourselves by considering all of the different 3- and 4-dimensional characteristics. So even if you're not sure it'll fit, let us know. And we can connect you to folks that might be a better fit for you, should know about your use case.
There is a link to a spreadsheet where you could fill in your use case in the collaborative notes under resources. So that would be perfect if we got more use cases from you.
Yes, yes. Thank you all. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you, Martina. Thank you. That was fun.